All right, I'm going to stop recording and see if Tim's computer has screwed us all.
From ScienceSortOf.com, you're listening to Science Sort of.
Hello and welcome to Science Sort of. This is a special edition number 16. We're going to call this the Science Sort of Book Club, or SSO Book Club. We'll workshop it. It's a book club episode. We are talking about a book we all read. That book is called Project Hail Mary. It is definitely a book about things that are science and things that are sort of science, and maybe not so much wish they were science, but I am your host, Ryan. Joining me to talk about Project Hail Mary is Joe Batwinis.
Hello.
And special correspondent reporting from abroad, really on the front lines of what's happening in gay Paris, it's Tim Dobbs.
Hello, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Comment ça va?
Should we do it in French? We can.
I've now exhausted my French, so I think I'm good. I know bonjour. Oui. That's it.
On garde.
Super, allons-y.
The Three Musketeers. Cardinal Richelieu. I know names from that particular story. Personal favorite of mine. How y'all doing?
Super.
Good. Yeah, I think we're, as you said, I'm living in Paris right now, and so there's this huge span of time zones that we're talking across. So, yeah, feeling good to have figured out a time that works for us across the globe.
Yeah, totally.
You're +1 over there.
Yeah, GMT plus, well, UTC plus 1.
UTC +1. I'm UTC -8.
All right, listen, we do not need to get into the time zones.
No, let's talk about time zones.
We need to get into time dilations thanks to relativistic effects of high acceleration. How about that?
Whoa.
Or a transition to talk about the book, the new novel by Andy Weir, former guest of the show. What episode was he on, Joe? Should have looked that up ahead of time.
It's been a minute. We should have, but it's a special edition, so we don't have to do that as much research. That's
True.
Works, right?
So this is a special edition book club episode. All three of us read the book. We all really enjoyed it, and we thought, it's kind of a perfect discussion for the show. We thought about inviting Andy on, but I also kind of I just want to talk about the book, and that felt like it would have been awkward to do with the author on the call. So, if you're listening, Andy, we thought about you. You were a great guest, and I really enjoyed talking to you, but didn't want to make for an awkward situation where we could get into the nitty gritty of all the stuff about the book. This is going to be a spoiler filled episode. So if you've not read Project Hail Mary and intend to, and it definitely has all the elements of a sci-fi thriller similar to The Martian, his initial first novel. So I would just warn people about that. And yeah, what do you guys think? I really liked it.
I enjoyed it quite a lot.
Yeah, I really liked it.
I thought it was. He did a good job. As he did in The Martian, he did a good job of keeping things justified from a scientific perspective. I guess I'll say he didn't take too many leaps of hand wavy technology. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Joe, was episode 228 our glitch for this mission, which we named it that because we almost lost that episode.
Sure did.
I don't think I ever told Andy that, but that was in the early days of using the Zencaster when it was still in beta, and I basically had to get files sent to us from New Zealand to recover that one. We had our own little science problem to solve. Before we get any further, since I know Tim went up and got one, do you want to tell me what you're drinking, Tim, over there?
Yeah, well, so I thought about just having some Parisian water and having a discussion about the hard water in Paris, and then I thought, oh, come on, even for science sort of, that's a little dry.
Is the water in Paris particularly hard?
It's a lot of calcium. My kettle is just caked in calcium, and you get little chunks of it falling out.
Is it karst? Are you on karst?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is famously, Paris has what the catacombs underneath it, and I think a lot of it has to do with like the mining underneath and all that. Never mind. It was a good topic for science, sort of, I guess.
Well, I remember to name drop another former guest of the show. I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about the soil quality in the Bordeaux region and how I think it is chalky, like a very Cretaceous chalk.
Oh, interesting.
Chalky soil, which is one of the reasons that apparently the Pinot Noir from that area is similar to the Pinot Noir from similarly soil horizoned farms in Oregon and Northern California. So I don't know.
Huh. Intriguing.
Karst, for people who don't know,
I was about to
is
ask.
a topography formed by usually like more water soluble rocks. So your limestones, marble can form karstic, dolomite, gypsum. So if you think about the topography in like eastern Kentucky, where there's all like Mammoth Cave area, where there's just like holes in the ground everywhere, sinkholes and caves and stuff like that. Florida is a carbonate shelf platform as well.
Minneapolis is, to the best of my recollection, as well. The 10,000 lakes sort of come from a carving of the land.
And the campus of Santa Cruz, the University of California, Santa Cruz, that's a marble karstic. Greenbrier County, West Virginia. So they're not uncommon, but is characterized by a lot of caves because the limestone is somewhat water soluble, especially in slightly acidified waters. So the water can carve out caves very well, but it also creates very mineral rich water, which is one of the reasons that those areas are also really good for brewing and making whiskey, because you get this really like mineralized, well filtered water springing up out of the ground out of these limestone caves. So
it's interesting. Well, I found I sort of came here and I was like, sure, it's not Bay Area water, it's different. You should like drink the water where you are. And then today I was at the store and I was like, I'm buying a Brita filter.
Gonna pass your water through some charcoal.
Yeah, it works. I can taste the difference.
I mean, I just for me,
work.
For me having a pitcher like that, I usually just like water at refrigerator coldness. So that's for me why I go that route, just because it typically is a little colder than what comes out of the faucet. But yeah. Well, you said you're not having just water though.
Oh, I'm not having just water. That's true. So the other thing I'm having is pulco, agrum pulco. It's quite common for French grocery stores, it seems, to just sort of have a whole section of syrups that you can buy, and you can mix it with carbonated water or into a cocktail or whatever. And so I have this sitting on my counter. It is citrus flavored syrup, so it's sort of a mix of grapefruit and oranges, and it's very, very sweet and very sour if you just drink it straight. But I've mixed it with some bubbly water, some eau pétillante. And I'm enjoying a nice sort of virgin cocktail.
Did you make like a spritz with it? Could you do like a little prosecco or champagne?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
It goes really well like that as well when you're having champagne from the Champagne region. Thank you very much.
Yes. Otherwise, it's just a sparkling Project Hail Mary. A sparkling karst.
If it's not from a particular region of Andy Weir's head, then
that's true for I listened to that History of English podcast and I've talked about it before, but Limousin is also a region in France that they used to cut trees to make carriages for the royalty, which is why a fancy vehicle is now called a limousine.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
I'm a car
no
person.
idea.
You'd think I'd know that.
You would think that.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So what car themed drink do you have, Joe?
I have a Coke Zero. It's while it is at approaching 8 p.m. where you are, it's all of 11 a.m. here. And I wasn't sure how we were going to handle this episode, so I just have a Coke Zero. I apologize, it's a little bit boring, but that's where I'm at right now.
And I forgot we were recording this until Joe mentioned it, and it was on my calendar and everything. I think I need to make sure alerts are turned on for that calendar properly, but I was just kind of having a lazy Saturday. And
also you get baby excuses for a while.
I was totally gearing up because whoever renovated this house before we moved into it, they clearly did not see Wi-Fi coming. And so the amount of coaxial cable I've had to strip out of the walls is insane. I could create a space elevator with the amount of coaxial cable I have in like trash bags. So I just stripped out all the coaxial cable in the baby's room, and now I need to patch a bunch of holes in the wall. So that's what I was getting ready to. I was literally like getting up off the couch to be like, well, I guess I should get started on patching the walls, and then saw the message from Joe, and I was like, oh, I don't have to do that right now. I have to go do something else. So because I forgot and felt bad, I quickly ran to the beer fridge and I grabbed a beer that Abe gave me, because I think literally like 60 to 70% of the beer in my beer fridge right now is stuff that Abe has given me. He's giving me stuff faster than I can get through it. And this was an emergency drinking beer, which seemed like the perfect beverage when you forgot you were supposed to be on the podcast. So this is a Wild Heaven Pills style all-purpose blend from Avondale Estates, Georgia. But it does say on the can, emergency drinking beer. So,
well, that's perfect for our book.
Yeah,
that is
full of emergencies.
Okay, so I'm going to try to summarize the plot of the novel in the broadest terms possible, and then we can get into a little bit more discussion about it. Well, I mean, it's interesting the way it's structured. Basically, astronaut wakes up on a ship, doesn't know why he's there, doesn't know what's going on, and kind of doesn't have memory of how he got into this situation where he's waking up from a coma on a spaceship.
And his two crewmates are also dead when he wakes up.
Yes.
Dun dun dun.
And so you're immediately thrown into the mystery of it. Whereas, like when you read The Martian, Mark Watney, you still learn sort of how he got. It still starts in sort of a similar place where he's already stranded, but he remembers how he got there. So like there's an extra layer of mystery that this person has to science their way out of. And what you end up learning through a series of flashbacks and his own memory coming back and figuring stuff out is our sun started dimming. And it started dimming at a rate quick enough that it was going to snowball the Earth and kill a ton of people. And we found out that it was dimming because there's this microbe that was able to essentially eat solar energy and then go reproduce in the atmosphere of Venus. And then as it reproduced, it was doubling its size and slurping up more and more solar energy. And the scientists here on Earth figured out that it was an infection that was infecting all of our local stars with this solar eating microbe that they call
the astrophage.
Astrophage, yeah, star eater, literally.
Good name.
Yeah, it was good.
I mean, and also we should the phage, it has a linguistic background, but also phage is what we call viruses that infect bacteria. They're called phage. So it's like he's borrowing from real life biology as well.
Yeah, and we learned that there's a star in our neighborhood, so to speak, Tau Ceti, that is not dimming the way all the other stars are. So we can tell that all the other stars around us are also infected with this solar pathogen. And so scientists working together on Earth figure out a way to turn this microbe into a fuel, because it is capable of storing so much energy and then emitting that energy back out to move at relativistic speeds. And so we build a ship using this as fuel, and we're able to launch 3 astronauts to Tau Ceti on a one-way trip to figure out what is in that solar system that is allowing their star to not dim. And that's kind of the problem that has to be solved.
Yeah, so this gets us to about halfway through the book, right?
Yeah, and the main human character, spoiler there, is Ryland Grace. He's I'll say a Mark Watney type.
yeah.
Actually, you know what? I actually think he's less likable than Mark Watney. At least his arc in the story is becoming a more likable person, I think.
Yeah. And
it took me, I was maybe 60% of the way through the book when I realized the joke of it's, the Catholic prayer, Hail Mary full of grace, and his name is Grace, and he's in a ship called the Hail Mary.
Oh, I definitely never noticed that.
I'm getting it right now.
Yeah.
Today I learned. Can I give you just a sense of, you said like, well, he's a certain type. I was looking at my highlights from my kind of first read of this, and very early on in the book, he doesn't know what's going on in any way, but the computer has given him like something to eat in the spaceship, and then he's trying to get more, and the computer's like, no, you can't have any more, and he just writes, "It makes sense. My digestive system is getting used to semi-solid food right now. Best to take it easy. If I eat as much as I want, I'll probably get sick. The computer is doing the right thing." And I just feel like, okay, yeah, that's a particular type of guy who's just like, well, yeah, if you work through the logic, I'm pretty sure the computer is the right person to be taking care of these things.
And it's funny, this book tries a lot to draw distinctions between scientists and engineers, but it definitely feels like it's being written from the perspective of an engineer in making those distinctions. Does that make sense?
I don't see a problem with
that. But do you think I'm right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, no question.
I agree. I also had somewhere in my highlights, he talks about like creating a flight plan, and he's like, well, he trusts my science. And I'm like, making flight plans is engineering. Like you can't pretend that that's a scientific. There's not. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, it's the vanity of small differences, I suppose. But
if you're making a flight plan based on Newtonian mechanics, like orbital plan, that's, I guess, a little more sciencey maybe, but
it feels like a reach, Ryan.
Okay, no, yeah, reaching out to orbit.
I mean, it's orbital mechanics. It's all just gravity.
So this character he's kind of created a similar puzzle box for this character to solve that he did for The Martian, where it's like he's alone, he doesn't have anyone to talk to but himself. His inner monologue is frankly a little annoying, but I think it was supposed to be. He's a school teacher, so he doesn't swear. He comes across, I think, as a little immature, emotionally immature, psychologically immature, in a way that is interesting to. I think the scenes where he's on Earth before getting on the ship actually are it's really interesting the way he bounces off the other characters, especially what's her name, the boss, Strat.
Yeah.
So this guy, I think he has a PhD, but he left academia, and I thought this was a little silly too. He left academia because he wrote a paper that pissed everyone off, and so now everyone knows who he is because of this paper he wrote that was just so shockingly, oh, how dare you? And it's like, I don't, that's not
that
the
did
thing
seem
that
unlikely.
Yeah,
that seemed unlikely. More likely that people just wouldn't read it and nobody knows who you are.
Yeah, I think the way you fail out of academia is, no one reads it at all. If you write a highly controversial paper that everyone is paying attention to, maybe you get that's a lot of attention, and you could get
you usually already have to be kind of a giant in the field to get away with that in the first place. It probably just wouldn't get published. The editor, it would probably get desk rejected by the editor or not make it through peer review because it was so out there. But in the world of Project Hail Mary, that was enough to get him scrubbed out of academia, whereas it seems more likely that people just didn't want to work with him because he's kind of a jerk. It doesn't seem that pleasant, but it was an astrobiology paper, and so he's sort of consulted because now the sort of ideas that he presented have become very relevant in this moment of crisis.
Right. He wrote that there was an argument for a non-carbon based life form, right? That was his shtick.
Non-water based life.
Non-water based.
Yeah. Which is sort of the crucial. I would say that he takes. We said earlier that Andy Weir does a really good job at justifying things. It's relatively hard sci-fi, except he takes too big. I just made this up. Yeah. Which is fine. That's part of it. And one of them is about materials, which maybe we could talk about later. But the first one is this concept of astrophage. He just makes up an interesting, cool, what if this existed organism, and he makes his character an expert in it.
Which I remember when we had him on the show. I think we kind of generally ended the conversation with what are you working on next. And he told us about how he was working on a new novel that was going to break. I think he said he was going to break one rule of science to make the plot happen. And when I read Artemis, his sophomore novel, I kept waiting for that, and I never saw it. So I think he was talking about this book back then. I don't think he was talking about Artemis. I think he was talking about Project Hail Mary when we talked to him for the show.
This one would fit that description more than Artemis.
So Ryland Grace realizes that he's no longer in the solar system. He's in this Tau Ceti solar system. He's realized that he's basically been given a one-way ticket to a different solar system to save humanity, which is not a heroic act that he would think that he would take upon himself, which I think is an interesting place to put a character. But he's such a problem-solving nerd that he's still gonna work the problem, and he's making progress on observing that there is astrophage in the Tau Ceti system, but for whatever reason, it's not draining the star to the point where it's dimming and wreaking havoc on the planets. And so what's going on? And then in the middle of him starting to work on that problem, another ship shows up. And that to me was the hell yeah moment. I was so on board at the second that it became clear that there was another ship in this solar system.
Yeah. It rolled. You talked about page turners. That was all right, something's happening. This is great. And
the reveal was so well done in terms of he's got this special type of telescope that can see the astrophage because it emits a certain wavelength of radiation called the Petrov radiation.
Petrova line or something like
Petrova
that?
line, something like that.
It's based on the scientists who discovered the astrophage in the first place. So they called it her name was Irina Petrova, so they called it the Petrova problem. And then they made it the Petrova line because that's the line that connects the sun and the planet that it's recharging on.
Right, and they recharge on the sun. They reproduce on the planet.
Right. And so that's the Petrova line between those two.
The life cycle is basically like how whales go up into the Arctic region to feed on krill and gorge themselves, and then swim into the tropical waters to give birth and have their babies. It's like sort of the same kind of thing. Astrophage go to the sun to get energy, and then they go to a planet. They need a planet with carbon dioxide in its atmosphere to reproduce. So in our solar system, they're using Venus because Venus has a lot more carbon dioxide and is closer to the sun than Earth. And he finds a similar planet in the Tau Ceti system. But he's looking at the Petrova line through his scope, and then he like sees this flash of Petrova light, and then suddenly his view is like blocked in a certain way where he's like he can't see the Petrova line anymore, and he's like, well, hang on, why would my scope be blocked with like a hard line, and like that doesn't make any sense. And then he like, switches to optical telescope, and he realizes it's another ship, and it's just like so I was like so giddy with excitement because I just and it turns out it is an alien race that is from a nearby solar system that is having the same problem, and they came up with the same solution to build a ship that uses astrophage as fuel and fly on over to check it out. But we can get into more of the details, but basically they have to start figuring out how to communicate ship to ship, and it's really like that. I love that moment of initial discovery where it's like Ryland has to accelerate a little bit, and then to see if that ship matches his speed. And it's like, okay, so like we're feeling each other out, and like can we get a little closer? And the other ship has this exterior hull robot, and it throws him a little canister that like has a 3D printed model of the solar system that they're from, so he can figure it out. And then he's able to like weld a little bit back onto the 3D model to show which solar system he's from. And I don't know, what did you guys think of that section of the book?
Yeah, that was cool. The feeling each other out, trying to learn about each other, exchanging the playing catch across space, trying to figure out who they are, where they're from, figure out how to even talk to each other. Right. Like dock, yeah. The that was one stretch is a little bit stretchy for me was the ability to like figure out any kind of like
docking.
Oh yeah, we can just make that work. No problem.
Yeah, literally just like I'll just epoxy. I'm just gonna epoxy this onto your hull. It's fine.
Yeah, so that's the second big like I think he just made up a thing to make it all work. Is this xenonite material?
Yeah, so
xenonite's doing a lot of lifting in this book.
Yeah, and having like an infinite supply of it too.
Yeah.
So Ryland Grace is very confused by this ship because it's like basically built with a ton of right angles and blockiness in a way that aerodynamically or even astrodynamically like it's not a good way to hold pressure in. That's the thing he keeps coming back to is a ship needs to be pressurized for the life inside of it to survive. And this ship seems horribly designed for that. But when he starts getting samples of this material, he's got a science tool on his ship that allows him to figure out what this material is made of, and it's made of xenon, but it's somehow a hardened form of xenon. And the reason that doesn't work is xenon is a noble gas, so like argon or krypton, and it doesn't interact with other things because it has a full valence field of electrons. Am I getting that right, Tim? Am I remembering my basic chemistry right?
But basically it has no reason to connect with something unless a lot of it's already in a pretty low energy state because it's got all its electrons.
It's very stable. It doesn't have like a lot of instability in it, and you can excite a noble gas and it will emit that energy back out as colored light, which is how like neon signs work. Neon is another noble gas.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, so somehow these aliens have figured out how to get xenon to play nice with other matter, and form this really crazy, powerful alloy. I guess it's an alloy-ish.
Yeah, it's like steel. Yeah. He made steel, but he made the greatest steel ever. That it is both has incredible material properties, but can be made really easily.
Yeah,
it's great.
And it's just stupid strong, which is why they can have their ship be like all right angles and still be a pressure vessel, which is like.
Because it's basically just like a two-part epoxy that they just like mix these two goops together, and suddenly xenite, and the alien essentially has the ability to like 3D print anything that they need. So they eventually are able to dock the two ships together, and they are able to pressurize each side of the tunnel with their own atmosphere, and then that's when they actually get to meet, and that's when we meet Rocky. They're these little like rock spider alien monster things, and
I think you talked about Ryland not being that likable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a real it's shows a real craft in that Rocky is so likable.
Yes.
Like,
Oh yeah, Rocky's the
you're
best.
like, look at this great little guy. He's my best friend, but also he's a scary rock monster who lives in like 400-degree ammonia
and watches you sleep.
Yeah, and watches you sleep.
He managed to like thread the needle in making Rocky basically a really cool Muppet. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like like it's, you know, like it's like kind of Star Wars does this too, like, which I guess is, you know, Star Wars. Some of those are actual Muppets as well, where it's like you take a thing that should be scary and unsettling, but the way he writes about how he moves and gets excited and bounces around, like it's very endearing. And it's not a puppy, but it almost like has kid brother vibes, you know.
There's definitely some
100%.
puppiness to it. Yeah.
A little puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a moment where Rocky is put in a dangerous situation and you're not sure if it's going to work out okay, and I was getting mad. I was like, don't you dare, don't you do it, don't do it, Andy, don't you hurt my little rock guy. So then you have your sort of the section of the book that's basically Arrival, where they have to figure out each other's language, and Rocky's language is very like sing song. They kind of like whistle to each other, and he's you know, that part I thought. They discuss it a little bit in the book of like what are the odds that we would think at roughly the same speed, and I didn't love the explanation there that like the gravity on our planet is roughly the same, so like that's the speed at which you would need to be able to think to get away from a predator. That was pretty from an evolutionary perspective. That didn't quite scan, but obviously it's a conceit. The book doesn't work if the story then becomes the story of Arrival if they don't think in enough of the same way to be able to communicate in real time, I think. So I was fine with it, but
Yeah.
I thought them figuring out each other's language ended up being a pretty easy solve.
Yeah.
Just
I
like
agree.
It was like Rocky's memory is perfect, so he doesn't need to worry about it. Ryland is able to create a spreadsheet, and then like within the course of them working together, basically just becomes fluent in this alien's language and doesn't need any assistance in communicating. Which I guess, you know, if you had like, I don't know, Tim, you tell us, like full immersion, how quickly can you really switch over to a new way of speaking and thinking?
I cannot speak conversational French. I can go to a store, I can order the things I need, I can answer basic questions. And it's been 6 months. So I mean, maybe if I had to solve the end of the world with a French person, I think I could probably figure that out.
You'd buckle down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, also I work in English. So like
Right.
the research institute where I work at is in English, so that kind of takes off a lot of pressure.
And like Ryland is still clearly using the ship in English. Like he's not, you know, he doesn't like start coding things in Rocky's language.
Yeah.
So I thought that Ryland was still just talking to Rocky in English.
He is, yeah. So that was another thing where it's just like Rocky is basically Rocky's memory works more like a computer than organic memory, and he's able just to have perfect recall. So like,
Right.
he doesn't need real-time translation or even real-time mathematical conversions because they use a hexadecimal system on his planet, which makes sense. That, you know, which actually that kind of didn't make sense because he has 5 legs, so I would expect him to use base 5, not base 6. So I was a little.
I thought he had
like,
6 legs. Did I
he's
misremember
5.
that? I don't know how to dig that up quickly in my notes.
Yeah. I've got the book here, but man, it's going to be a lot of flipping to figure out which page that's on.
Rocky Hail Mary fan art. Here we go.
Yeah, that's actually the way to do it, for sure.
Yeah, 5.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, 6 is weird then.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I also another thing I think that was really clever to make Rocky more endearing is that he wears clothes. He's got like a little sweater.
I know, and he had towards the end he has like a
He's got like formal wear.
Yeah, formal wear with like special. I think the way he described it. I mean, this is all spoiler anyway. The way he described it was that like, well, they didn't look very good, but I could see how like they would like have an interesting texture because Rocky doesn't have eyes.
Right. That's another thing we hadn't really talked about is like Rocky.
It's all sonar.
Yeah, these they're daredevil species. They can see everything around them using really advanced, almost not quite echolocation because he doesn't seem to need to send a signal out to bounce back, but he's able to just even through ambient air, and they live in a denser ammonia atmosphere, so that would affect how sound bounces around it.
It could be just like an ultrasonic type emitter happening all the time, right? Like he's just always vibrating at a frequency that just,
which is another one of those things
return.
that they end up using to solve a lot of problems because Rocky can basically has X-ray vision around the ship because he can see through walls through using sound as long as there's atmosphere, which was interesting. And they're able to figure out, even though it doesn't mean anything to Rocky, they're able to figure out a form of xenonite that's clear. So they're able to have like basically window tunnels. He's got like a hamster cage set up in Ryland's ship. while they
I
start
did
working
like
the problem.
I liked the like mild irritation that he had with Rocky taking up so much space, because at the end it feels very like, oh, look at this dog who I think is very cute and fun, and also is kind of being annoying right now. And like, I don't
Mhm.
know, I found that very endearing.
And the ship, the Project Hail Mary ship, we haven't really talked about that at all, but it's basically got like crew quarters, a command capsule room, and then a lab, and that's basically it. And the rest is just like fuel storage. And it's able to not telescope out, but it's able to detach the engine compartment from the 3 crewed compartments with these long tethers, and then spin up to create, spin gravity when the story calls for it. And I actually thought this was really clever. It was like the debate that they had on Earth while building the ship was, do we develop scientific equipment that can work that we've never needed in space before, so but now needs to work in zero gravity, or is it engineering wise a smarter solution to use scientific equipment that we know works fine in gravity and just figure out a way to create spin gravity with a ship? And I thought that was a cool, like that to me, it
That was
like,
a very real engineering
yeah,
problem.
it was a debate I could
like that a
actually
lot.
see people having. Like,
That's a very real discussion, right? It's even in just real aerospace, right? It's I've got a problem to solve. I don't have a lot of time to solve it. So my options are either I can pay a company to develop a box that will operate in my vehicle's unique environment, or I can just adapt my vehicle to accept whatever boxes already exists, and that'll be way faster.
right.
Right. And that's very real. The idea of just like, no, we just need to have a spin gravity system on the ship, and then that way we can just go grab all this scientific equipment that we use on Earth, and we'll just make the ship like Earth, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be faster. It'll be cheaper. We can get it right now. And in an emergency development schedule like they were in for this project, that makes perfect sense.
And that part of the novel also, like, it leaned in very heavily to, I think, the brand of optimism that Andy Weir legitimately has as a person, from when you and I talked with him, Joe. Like, when you look at The Martian, when you look at this book, it seems like he's a guy that truly believes that people can come together to solve big problems in a moment of crisis. So, like, getting a guy off of Mars or getting a ship to another star in time to save the planet. And that's one of the areas where I think I philosophically am not in as much alignment with him, just because, like, I study climate change and the evidence suggests we're not really doing that.
Yeah.
But it was very much like any, of all the engineering problems that we need to solve to get this ship built, geopolitics wasn't one of them, which I thought, it's interesting that that's sort of something that he consistently skirts over being an issue that needs solving in the course of his novels.
Yeah, I think Don't Look Up got that one more accurate than.
I could do a special edition
Andy's
on that
does.
episode too, on that too, but not this time. But for the purposes of telling a story, I understand why that's not something he wants to dive into, and you just have to accept that, like, the U.S. is willing to work with China and Russia and all the other spacefaring nations to get this problem.
It also makes for a much more enjoyable book, right? So, like, comparing like the read of Project Hail Mary with the watch of Don't Look Up, right? You come away from Project Hail Mary being like, that was a great book. I really enjoyed it. You come away from Don't Look Up as like, yeah, that's depressing. That's probably what would happen.
Yeah. and Seven Eves, the Neil Stephenson novel, I'm not sure if either of you have read that.
I have not. Don't spoil it. It's on my list.
There's no spoilers. It's just, it's a similar, like, there's a similar crisis that requires a lot of cooperation, and part of the story is how that cooperation is hard and sometimes falls apart.
Gotcha.
In ways that are, I think that's vague enough that I'm not spoiling anything.
Yeah.
Seven Eves is fantastic, and if either of you or if both of you get around to reading it, that could be, I would happily make that the second of our series of the Science Sort of Book Club. Well, we probably got to do Jurassic Park at some point, right? We've done the movie.
I mean, I'll happily reread Jurassic Park. On my shelf.
So once Ryland and Rocky realize that they are both in this solar system to solve the same problem, it turns out Rocky is alone on his ship as well, but he started off with a crew of 23 other, is it Iridians? Is that how you guys pronounce his race?
That's how
what I was saying.
Okay.
That's what Ryland decides it's called.
Yes.
Because they're from Arid.
The star that we have named Arid, so he calls them Iridians.
Right. Or the planet Arid. Yeah.
Arid.
The star is 40 Eridani.
And so they are able to get their communication issues sorted out and their lodging situation sorted out, so that they are now basically living together, communicating, both trying to solve this problem. they realize that the planet that the astrophage are reproducing on doesn't have the same density of astrophage that the planets in their home solar systems do. So they come up with the theory that there's must be a natural predator of astrophage that's living in the atmosphere of this planet, which I thought was a leap of logic. And I didn't buy the leap in logic that because there was a predator for the astrophage in this solar system that was the solar system of origin. Like sometimes predator and prey both make it to a new spot on Earth. It's so anyway, whatever. It didn't end up being like super important to the story, but the point is they needed to get a sample of the atmosphere from this other planet. And so they detach Rocky's ship, they use the Project Hail Mary, and they have to figure out basically a way to take a ship that was not rated for atmosphere and get a scoop of atmosphere from this planet, which I thought was a pretty good sequence of events that they had to then solve and then get kind of wrong. And I liked that was a section of the book where like they kind of screwed up a lot in figuring out how to do that, and it didn't go very well and created a lot more problems for them down the line.
That scene kind of bugged me. I was like, no, this didn't work.
this is the failure point.
This is the end of the book.
Yeah.
The ship exploded.
But they're able to prevent the ship from going explode, and now they have a sample of this atmosphere, and they find there is like a larger macrophage that is able to eat the astrophage that they named Taumiba. It's like an amoeba, but from Tau Ceti. And that theoretically then could be the solution to the problems in both their home systems, but they still have science to do. And Rocky's plan was always to fly home because his species is very, very long lived and he's got plenty of fuel to do it. And because he started off with a crew of 23, he's got plenty of food to get home.
Well, and they also don't, like, Rocky's people didn't have like as advanced computers, if I recall correctly, right? Like they threw that ship together, they figured out how to do it, but like their computing capacity wasn't nearly
because they don't have any
humans was.
They don't understand the electromagnetic spectrum the same way we do because they don't have eyes, was my understanding. So like
because like they didn't know about time. He didn't know about time dilation, right? Like,
he didn't realize that less time had passed for him than had passed on his home planet.
Right.
And so they don't know relativity. And the reason that Rocky's crew all died is because the ship wasn't radiation shielded, because they didn't know that radiation was a thing because they'd never been outside their own atmosphere before, and they don't have the receptors they've never thought to build receptors for electromagnetic radiation.
There's a sort of implication that like they're not spacefaring because they have a really ammonia dense planet where like light wouldn't really pierce it anyway.
They're not like eyes. Walking the plane staring up at the stars like we were.
Exactly.
Right.
There's no stars to capture their imagination, so why bother?
And they're covered in rock, so if anything they're probably we don't really get into a lot of what his planet is like, but I would imagine them as like a burrowing people, right? They probably are, more interested with us, especially because the way that planets do conduct sound, right? We see that with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. I imagine they'd be much more fascinated with what was underneath their feet than what was above their heads.
I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, Hail Mary too.
Lack of heads. So Rocky was basically the mechanic for this trip, and so he was in the engine bay, which is surrounded by the proto astrophage fuel, which is a good radiation shield. So he was fine, but it was complete dumb luck. That's how it worked out, which I thought was sad and an interesting way to put Rocky in the same situation that Ryland. And the reason Ryland's two co-pilots or crewmates died is just because like the coma technology wasn't perfect and they just died at some point.
Right. That's a whole other aspect.
It was like, I think he tried to write
thematic resonance, but yeah, there was this entire project about like, okay, here's an experimental coma technology to let you sleep the years that you'll be traveling for, and only certain people can, they have the right genetics for it. But yeah, they emphasize a lot how it's dangerous, I guess, just to sort of justify that.
Yeah, I mean, making somebody go to sleep for 4 years is definitely going to be risk. There's going to be risks associated with that, and it just didn't work out for 2 of the crew.
And at a pretty high rate of acceleration too. I mean, it was 1.5 Gs, which is not terrible, but
yeah, it's not too bad.
It's more stress on the body than otherwise. You otherwise get while sleeping,
for sure.
And it's funny you mentioned the whole thing about Rocky watching him sleep, and I liked that there was a nod to, they figured out early on the 2 of them in their relationship. And I heard a buddy of mine described it. He said this like it's basically a buddy cop movie, but it's just solving a science problem instead of solving a crime. Which in reading it I don't totally agree with, but I see the point he was trying to make. And I like that they figured out early on that there are times where you just have to say, it's my culture. I can't explain it other than like it's just what my culture does. And in the case of Rocky, it's they always watch each other sleep. Like it's really important in their culture that somebody is watching you while you sleep.
Well, it's because they're super vulnerable when they're asleep.
Right, because they're like fully shut down and they don't wake up just because there's a noise, rustling from the.
Right, you can't wake them up. So
Yeah.
they're super vulnerable.
But eating for them is very private. They don't like being watched while they eat. And so it's like it's interesting that so Rocky is like very fascinated by the fact that Ryland doesn't mind eating in front of him because that's a thing that Eridians only do in private.
Yeah, and I think he does it sort of for the science at least once, right?
Yes.
Rocky's like, okay,
Yeah.
fine, and it's like weird.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He like opens up. It's like super weird.
Yeah. And there's like some external digestion happening with like he's got like hot mercury blood and he kind of like pre-cooks the food like by like bleeding on it. It was well done in terms of creating a scenario that is sufficiently gross without being completely disgusting that you don't like Rocky as much as you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think, Ryan? How do you think, from like an evolutionary point of view, do you think he did a good enough job, sort of justifying Rocky's general physiology? Like,
Yeah.
he basically works on steam.
I didn't have any issues with that. It's not totally dissimilar from how echinoderms move and locomote. Like they don't have muscles; they have like basically a series of pressurized tubes that they can force liquid through to move their appendages and stuff. So
What's an echinoderm?
sea urchins, sea cucumbers, sea stars, brittle stars, sea lilies.
Spiders work a similar way, right? They work on blood pressure effectively.
What?
That's why they
do?
curl up when they die.
I didn't know this. I thought it was like musculature.
Didn't know that about arachnids, but it's definitely. I mean, because they still have muscles, whereas like echinoderms don't have a tissue that we would call a muscle. They just have these like weird pressure valves tubes.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I was fine with that. I mean, yeah, I wasn't reading this book looking to be critical of it, so I really was just enjoying reading it. So there were a few times where like something about the evolutionary biology of it all would bump on me slightly, but not enough to like take me out of the story and make me not enjoy it.
Yeah, I guess that's the question. I feel like
like I would say and again, really enjoy the book. I would say Andy Weir writing Ryland like drunk on the vodka from his Russian his Russian crewmate, like that to me was like less believable than the way he wrote about evolution. Like he doesn't always do a good job at those sorts of more human things, but the alien stuff I was actually fine with.
Yeah, totally.
So I guess to sort of finish our very long-winded summary of the book, they do find that there is this macrophage in the atmosphere. The problem is it is very vulnerable to nitrogen, and both of because Rocky lives in an ammonia environment and we live in an atmosphere 70% nitrogen. And there's enough nitrogen in the atmosphere of Venus that it would not survive in the atmospheres where the astrophage is reproducing in their home solar systems. So they essentially have to set up like a breeding program to breed a tau amoeba that was strong enough to withstand X% nitrogen in the atmosphere, which I thought that was a little like wishy-washy, but it would probably work. But it was like I did like that there was sort of the same way we have with like antibiotic resistant bacteria. There was like a deleterious side effect to that process too that leads to their fuel supply getting eaten by the tau amoeba.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this was where. So first, I was impressed. I think there's okay, maybe this wouldn't actually work. Like you kind of have to get lucky. You can't sort of fight the physics of if this thing will always be destroyed by nitrogen, then there's nothing you can do. But they're modeling something that is really done in biotechnology to sort of get a microbe closer to what you want it to, called adaptive laboratory evolution. And it's the same process. They describe that as you just kind of give it a little bit of nitrogen and then only take the ones that survive that and you just do that over and over again. So I felt happy
Princess
about that.
Bride theory.
Yeah, I mean they essentially domesticated the tau amoeba, right?
Exactly.
They bred it for the traits that they wanted it to have iteratively over time. They selected the ones that did the best at the breeding program in phase 1 and moved those over to phase 2, and those are the ones that they pushed a little further into and so forth and so on. So
and I think it was at this point of the book where they say, we've bred the thing correctly. Well, nice to know you, Rocky. And then they go off. I think I looked at how I was reading this on a Kindle, so I was like, how many % done am I? I'm like, wait, what are they going to do with another like 20% of this book? Like there was a lot more book left, but I was like, well, the story's over. What's going to happen? Did you guys have that experience?
So we forgot, well, a little, but like we've mentioned a couple of times that Ryland's mission was a one-way trip because that was how much fuel and that was how much food he had. But because his two crewmates had died and Rocky is able to refuel him with his extra fuel, he suddenly has an opportunity to go home, which he's excited about because, as you learn throughout the course of the book, Ryland did not want to go on this mission. It was essentially coerced into it because he's a coward. And like I think him finding his bravery is actually a really cool part of his arc as a character.
Well, I was going to mention that earlier. It's actually more like he wakes up thinking he's brave and then eventually remembers, oh no, I'm a coward. I just got like forced into this. Yeah.
It's he conveniently, the last thing he remembers in his very slow recovery from a sort of drug-induced amnesia is the very last thing he remembers is that he was coerced to go on this trip.
Which, I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Like, do you really think that, I don't know if that character trait is believable or even in line with Weir's philosophy of like humans always band together to get the job done sort of thing. Like, I don't think I would have been sad to go on that mission, leave my family behind, but like, I don't think I would have, thrown a temper tantrum about it if I was the right person for the job,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's hard to like predict how you're going to react in that scenario, right? It's like it's one thing to talk about it, and then it's another thing like, no, this is a one-way trip, and you're going.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So he suddenly thinks this might not be a one-way trip. He has these little devices that he can, these little things called the Beetles, which are these little mini spaceships with essentially a hard drive with an engine on the back of it that he can fling back at Earth with the data that he has and a sample of the Talmiba, so that because the plan was not for this ship to ever return to the home solar system. And so he and Rocky say their goodbyes, which I actually thought was a pretty affecting scene because they weren't ever going to see each other again, and like they were the only two aliens to have ever met and communicated. And it's sort of like that thing in Contact where it's like the whole point of this entire trip was just to have one conversation, and now you go home. It bittersweet, but also like it feels like if it wasn't a moment of crisis for both their planets, there's so much more they could have done together.
Yeah, I mean, you figure you would include that in your note with the Talmiba that like, oh, by the way, at this star, there's a planet and it has sentient beings on it.
Which I imagine he did.
Yeah.
I guess they don't really get into that, but so anyway, yeah.
Sorry, I think they did some math at some point that sort of showed that like, well, with the time dilation and all the following things, like these generations are never going to be able to meet each other. Like, in 200 years, these planets might be able to talk. Or
Rocky, like Rocky lives long enough that Rocky is like, oh yeah, so like we'll go home, we'll save our planets, and then we'll get back together and hang out because you're a cool guy. And Ryland's like, no, like I'm only going to live like 50 more years at best. Like this is goodbye forever. And which I thought was actually really well handled. And then so they both start flying home, and Ryland keeps checking on Rocky's ship because they can kind of see the drive plume sort of expanse style. And they both have to deal with an infection of the Talmiba in their fuel lines on the Project Hail Mary ship. And then he notices that Rocky's ship is no longer accelerating away from him. And he realizes Rocky's ship must have gotten infected too. And the distances involved are in that perfect sweet spot where it's like Ryland could go get him, or he could keep going home and save his home planet. But he can't do both. He's got to now choose his moment of, do I go help my friend whose planet is also on the line, or do I worry just about my own species, my own planet? And even though I've got this backup, these little Beetle drives that I could send in my stead, do I still just go home because I want to go home? And I thought that was a really cool moment,
Yeah.
that, and obviously I think it probably doesn't surprise anyone who has any experience telling and receiving stories. He chooses to go save his buddy, and he launches the Beetles for home, and he goes and saves Rocky, and they go to Rocky's planet together. And the end of the book is like he's still living on Rocky's planet because they haven't figured out a way to get him back to Earth before his natural lifetime would expire. And they've at least figured out how to synthesize food, and he lives in a xenonite dome
and like teaches kids about Earth. He's
a teacher. When he left academia on Earth, he goes and becomes a teacher, and that's like he brings that up often in his character, in his recollections and like what he values. And so the fact that he ends up as a teacher on this alien world literally sitting at an organ playing in like essentially songs in their language to teach them about Earth, I thought was actually a really beautiful ending. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's nice. I really liked he became a sort of weird expat who's just, lives in a zoo kind of, and
on a planet with higher gravity, so he's kind of like he's aged a little faster than he might have. He's a little, he's a little tired. He's a little gets around with a cane sort of thing. It was really good. It was a really strong ending. I think it was a stronger ending than The Martian.
Do you guys think so? I mean, he doesn't touch on it, I assume, kind of on purpose, really. But we don't know what happens to Earth. Do you guys assume
that,
they
like,
do. Well,
they do. They do.
So the way Rocky's species works is they kind of have this hive. They're able to like activate a hive mind intelligence where they all like clump up and hum together, and then they're able to come up with like, galaxy brain solutions to things to use that meme. And they do eventually come to him and tell them now that they have access to his technology and they can like build telescopes that work with their sensory input, they were able to see that our star was getting back to its proper luminescence. So whatever the Beatles he had sent had at least one had made it, and they've been able to figure out how to get the Talmiva in the atmosphere of Venus. So
right. Yeah, okay. So we know that it worked, but we don't get any sort of description of that working.
No, we just know that their observations of our star on Rocky's home planet show that the star got fixed.
I think it's bold. I think it's a bold the direction to finish your narrative on being like, no, it was about this guy and his rock spider friend, not about like, and then humanity solved the problem.
Came together and solved it. Yeah.
Just kind of hand wave that at the end. I mean, he does cover it, but
I actually really liked it. I think it worked better than going big picture at the end. I think keeping it small, keeping it the story of the relationship between these two beings, the fact that he like gets to go to Rocky's home planet and meet his like partner who he names Adrian. And, I thought it was really sweet. I thought like I was glad because it's made pretty clear that like Ryland doesn't have a ton of friends on Earth, and so like he was kind of only going back. The fact that he was able to get a ride home, he was only kind of going back out of a sense of obligation and fear. He wasn't going back because there was anything there for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was very much a self-preservation drive to go back. It wasn't because he had something necessarily to go back to. It does leave room for a sequel if you wanted to, of the story of what happened on Earth after the Beatles came back.
Yeah, or the story of the next encounter between these two species. Like who builds the ship? Do they meet in the middle? Do they send a delegation? How does that relationship between not just the two individuals in this story, but the two species involved in the story continue to evolve?
Yeah. Because you could say that he included in the Beetle like his little spreadsheet of how to talk to Iridians.
Yeah, that's good point. And I think it's interesting that he managed to like create two species that both have a high degree of sociality that is distinct enough to like feel alien, but not so alien that they wouldn't want to talk to us. Like I feel like humans as a species were kind of extroverted. We're kind of always like we literally were sitting around the fire and there were wolves prowling and we're like, hey wolf, come sit down, I'll give you a snack, hang out for a while. Now we've got like dogs. and so I think that in terms of like ever actually finding aliens, I feel like humans are definitely going to want to have the conversation and have the relationship. And so like you almost have to hope that the aliens that we encounter have enough of a social structure that they too want to have a back and forth,
Yeah, totally. No, I think I mean necessarily you need it for the story, but one of the things I noticed when they talk about how to do the language translation, which in many ways he's like, listen, these guys just got to talk to each other. But one of the things that he does, which is that like, well, it's close, but it's not too close, is Rocky, when he asks a question, includes an extra sort of word or phrase to indicate that this is a question. So he'll be like, what are you doing? Question. And it's like, that's exactly the kind of thing where like to an English speaker, that's like weird, but it's not so weird that you have no idea what's going on. You can be kind of charming. And I think that's Rocky's general design overall is like right in that sweet spot of like putting the word question at the end of something.
And I thought he did a really nice job of, obviously they become friends, but they become friends in a way that's like pretty authentic. Like they kind of rib each other. They kind of give each other a hard time where it's like, Ryland wants to fix something and Rocky's like, no, give me, I fix. Like, you bad at fix. Like, Ryan has to be like, all right, fine. Because they've got a little airlock that they can pass items back and forth between their atmospheres, which, I thought stuff like that was really, really cute and well done.
Yeah.
in searching for fan art of Rocky, which I'll probably use for the. I shouldn't maybe use for the icon for the episode because that's a spoiler. Probably just use something from the book cover. But in searching for fan art of Rocky, I have now stumbled across who they have already cast to play Ryland Grace in the film. Who would you guys cast? And I'll tell you if you're right.
Well, one imagines
there's a film coming already.
Yes,
it's been optioned. I'm amazed it was cast when I last looked. It was just kind of like out there. But I'm just going to assume Chris Pratt because he plays everybody.
Close. It's it is a white man with roughly similar hair color to Chris Pratt, but it's not Chris Pratt.
What do you think, Joe?
Alan Tudyk. It's sci-fi, and he's in every sci-fi.
No, I mean Alec Tudyk is going to be the voice of Rocky. Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
You fool.
You're so natural.
100%. There's a weird alien. Who's it voiced by? Alan Tudyk, obviously.
I mean, it's either going to be that or like Ben Schwartz.
Yeah.
Like Sonic is Rocky. It's a Canadian gentleman. Give you a hint there.
Is it Ryan Reynolds?
No.
That'd be interesting.
It is a Ryan.
Oh, is it what's his face? You know,
guy who he's played an astronaut before. This is not his first outing into the outer space.
Is it Ryan Gosling?
It is Ryan Gosling.
Wow. I guess that's fine.
I don't know about that casting.
I don't know about it either. I think he's a little too self-serious.
It's way too serious.
Yeah. Why so
way
serious?
Too serious.
Why so serious?
I think
Heath Ledger would have killed it as Ryland Grace.
I think Ryan Reynolds would be great.
I don't know.
You want like a schlubby guy, like a little bit schlubby, right?
Yeah.
I think I would go for like an Adam Scott.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see an Adam Scott.
I think an Adam Scott.
The problem is all our big stars are very handsome and like,
right.
you know,
and Adam Scott's very handsome too, but I think he's enough of an everyman. I mean, maybe it's because I spent 7 seasons watching him next to Rob Lowe, and everybody looks kind of plain next to Rob Lowe.
Oh, there you go. Oh, what about speaking of? Did you guys remember that show, The Grinder? It was short-lived comedy.
Negative.
I feel like I vaguely remember it, but I certainly didn't watch it.
Well, that's my recommendation for this week. It's on some streaming service, and it's actually pretty funny.
So you're going Fred Savage?
But Fred Savage, I think, could be interesting.
That's too big a swing. No,
you think so? Come on, he's just like. He's like a little irritated all the time. He's like,
but Fred Savage does put me in a headspace of Always Sunny, and I feel like a Charlie Day.
Yeah,
I could see that. He was all right in Pacific Rim as the scientist, you know.
Yeah,
so I could see it.
He's done it before, right? Yeah.
And I think he's got the right amount of schlub that we're looking for here. He's still handsome, he's still a good-looking guy, but got the right amount of schlub.
All right, call Hollywood. We're gonna recast it.
Yeah, Charlie Day would be good.
Yeah.
Sold.
You guys listen to that Always Sunny podcast? They got a podcast now too.
And then you cast his wife, the waitress, as Strat.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah.
That's not Mary Elizabeth
Ellis.
Winstead, is it?
Ellis.
Mary Elizabeth Ellis.
Yes, you're
Mary
right.
Elizabeth Winstead, different person.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead is from Scott Pilgrim and many other fine films. I mean, she's really good at acting like she hates him. So I think that's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good casting.
Yeah, I like it.
You must have to have a rock solid marriage for those two parts to continue for 18 years of just acting like you absolutely hate this person's guts.
Yeah, it's not a good practice. You don't want to exercise that muscle too much of hating your significant other.
Yeah, for sure. I think Charlie Day, get on that ship, buddy. Because I can like imagine the scene where they have to like force him, onto the ship and him freaking out in the Charlie Kelly way of freaking out about things.
Yeah, he gets that high pitch and everything.
Yeah.
And then somebody just comes up behind him with a syringe and puts him to sleep.
I'm supposed to go to space? I'm supposed to go to space and solve the astrophage? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how.
And sedative.
Yeah. And Glenn Howerton is Rocky. All right. Well, anything else that needs to be said about the book? Do we ratings? Is this a ratings?
I mean, thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, it's
no. I think we gotta go.
More than that.
Star ratings.
Star ratings.
How many astrophages? So between 0 and 1 million astrophages.
So using my 5-star system I would give it a 5, which is I would read it again.
Wow. Okay. Tim?
Yeah, 4.5, I would say. And the only thing I would knock it on is that there was a handful of those kind of you were describing earlier that you kind of bump against where you're like,
Mhm.
come on, like you kind of see the gears working a little too much. But other than that, super fun read, does what you want. Strong recommend. Although if you're at this point of the podcast, you've probably read it or you've gotten the gist of it.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
go.
read it anyway.
Yeah. I think I'm also with you, Tim, at a 4.5. Just because it doesn't always have the depth that I think a story of this caliber and seriousness could have. But that's also to its credit because it keeps it very light and zippy, and it's an easy, fast, fun read that you still feel like you probably will learn something. And I just think I'm so enamored with the idea of First Contact, and I think this did a really solid job of it.
Yeah.
It didn't scratch the exact same itch that like an Arrival type movie scratched.
Oh
but
no, Arrival gets a 5 from me. I really like that movie.
yeah, I really like that movie too. But it's different. It's different in tone. It's different in
Totally different
pace.
And it's not really that hard of sci-fi at all. Really, it's very like poetic in a sense.
Yeah, so I would give this a 4.5 as well. And something I kept thinking about while reading this, and then maybe this be sort of my final thought, is I would really like Andy Weir to get to work on a video game or like an escape room or like a tabletop role playing campaign. Like I think I would love to personally be in a position to solve one of the puzzles that he seems really adept at crafting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that idea.
And Andy Weir for Fallout New Vegas 2.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Fallout's not even really a puzzle game so
But it
much.
could be.
I almost want him to do like a Myst type game, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
like it's a VR experience in a spaceship, but it's written by Andy Weir.
But that's what I think would be really cool. Like, I think this would have worked as a VR experience of just like you wake up in a spaceship. Now, what do you do? There's a game that was similar. It was by the same studio that did Gone Home. Did either of you play Gone Home?
I didn't play it.
Gone Home was highly recommended. It's pretty short. You can get through it in a couple hours, and it's literally just like you come home. You're a young woman who comes home from a break in college to a rural house in Oregon, and none of your family is home, and it seems like something has happened. And you basically just go around the house like reading letters and listening to audio tapes and trying to figure out like where your family and in particular your sister have gone. And it's really like it has a very beautiful ending, and it's one of those games like Julie watched me play a lot of this game just because it's like it's watchable. And their second game that the studio put out is called Tacoma, and it seems to be very similar in terms of it's that same sort of contemplative puzzle game but set in a spaceship or a space station called Tacoma.
Right.
And I think Andy Weir would probably create something that was much more propulsive than either of those two games, but I think it would similar vibes and or maybe something like The Witness. Did either of you play The Witness?
I did play The Witness.
Or
Witnesses, you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, I guess I'll solve this puzzle because it's what I can do right now.
Right.
And
it's
then
like
you kind of go from there.
And it's like, I guess I'll solve this puzzle, but that statue is really creepy. And also, is this Tetris? What's happening?
Yes.
That's how I felt playing The Witness.
Observation is kind of a game like you're describing. I feel like you wake up on a damaged space station and have to figure out what the hell's going on.
Oh, cool. There's also Abduction, which is the most recent game from Cyan, who made Myst. That was pretty solid.
Oh yeah, did you finish Abduction?
No.
Me neither. I got it in VR because I was like, I want to play VR Myst. Let's do it. And it was pretty fun in VR. But then I also was like, boy, I got to keep talking to these people. And I don't know, that I guess it felt like it was like I was not ready to be totally immersed in the world. I guess it wasn't propulsive enough. Maybe, I don't know.
The problem I had with Abduction was, and Abduction is like the setting for that game is a setting that I'm really into. The idea of like things that have slipped in between the worlds, and like a gas station that ends up in a different plane of reality. Like I love stuff like that. The problem is I so rarely have a good chunk of time to play games, so I maybe get to play a video game, maybe get to have like a day or two of playing video games every couple of months at this point in my life. And I also have to be careful because I know that I am a person who will get addicted to a game, like strongly, can't stop playing in a way that is not good for me having a job and a family life. So I have to be a little careful. I have to I can't turn on Witcher 3 unless I know that I don't have anything on my calendar for a couple hours, because I will be Geralt of Rivia playing Gwent for a minute. And when I have days like that, that's also usually a day that I can like have a beer and hang out. And a game like Abduction, if I don't remember everything that I did the last time I played the game because it was a couple of months ago and I had a beer, then I can't make progress the next time I open the game. You know what I mean?
Totally. You got to put it all in your head.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's why, something kind of like short and sweet would be really nice. Like I could see doing like just the very beginning of this book is like basically the part where he figures out what's even going on, would be like, oh, that'd be a nice experience, and try to figure that out.
So that's just something I thought about a lot reading the book, of just like, I think this would be a cool experience to have. Like, I think it would be fun to puzzle it out myself.
I wonder if there's a way to reproduce one of the fun little things is, as very early on as he's kind of recovering his memory, he makes an estimate and he realizes that he made the estimate in inches or in feet or something. And he goes, oh, well, I must be American then, because, well, maybe Canadian, but probably American, because why else would I have naturally thought that way? And it would be, I don't know how you could reproduce that particular kind of feeling, but it's neat.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea too. Probably just have to be whatever units the readout of the ship was giving you or whatever.
Yeah, you have to do some noticing, I guess.
But that's a cool thought. So that was Project Hail Mary. Great book. Really enjoyed it. I was excited to talk about it with both of you. I would say to our listeners out there, if you made it this far and haven't checked out the book yet, please check it out using a little website called bookshop.org, specifically bookshop.org/shop/science sort of, which is the hardest URL to pronounce I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. But that website supports local bookstores in sending out books, and I'm pretty sure they're the only website that you can go and buy books from, and they'll be sent to your house. So check it out at bookshop.org, or they got these things now. They're called libraries, and they're awesome. So I read this book on my library app, which is called Libby, Libby, and I'm able to log into my local library here in DC using the Libby app, and then I can get books for 2 weeks at a time and put holds on books that I'm excited to read that are not available yet, and it's really great, and I highly recommend it. So
yeah, strong recommend. That's where I get a lot of my books these days.
Bookshop.org and local libraries. All right, anything else?
No, that's it for me. Nice to talk to you guys. Glad we got to chat about this.
Yeah,
fun book. Let's read some more of them.
Yeah, what do we do? Do we figure out what the next Science Sort of Book Club is, or do we just let it happen organically like it happened this time and go from there?
We could. I mean, I'll put this out there. You guys ever read The Sparrow? I really liked it.
No, I haven't read The Sparrow.
Oh, it's what if Jesuits were the first people to make the first contact? So it's kind of like part missionary, part space thing, and it's very it's neat.
Is it? But I mean, we're gonna do another First Contact?
Well, so maybe not. Maybe it's not the one. But I like
the book. I'm predicting that I'll get shade for this, but I'm currently reading Ready Player 2.
I wouldn't give shade. I think for me, the Ready Player One, it came out sufficiently before the toxicity of that particular type of culture was super apparent on the internet. So like, I give Ernest Cline a bit of a pass, but it doesn't read the same way today for me as it probably read when it first came out. And I also find it to be like the fast foodiest of fast food fiction, where it's like, this is not good for me. Like, it's not good for my brain. This is just, but it's salty and sugary, and so it goes down smooth.
Yeah, it's a candy bar.
Yeah, for sure. But also, I give all this stuff a pass because, well, you're reading at least. I mean, honestly, I think for me, it is literally hard to get myself to sit and read anything for 20 minutes.
Right, which is
forcing that practice is good for me.
Yeah, so that was something that this book actually did really well, is it got me excited to keep reading. Not nothing.
Yeah, this was a page turner for sure.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like junk.
No, it didn't. The most recent book that prior to Project Hail Mary that gave me the scratch this same itch in terms of actually wanting to finish a book was called The Hike by Drew McGarry, and it's about a guy from Maryland, Joe, who goes to Pennsylvania for a business trip and wants to go on a short hike before his business meeting, and things go wrong from there. And it was very good. But not sci-fi, so probably not a good one for Science Sort of Book Club, but we'll figure something out. I guess the ending of this is who knows, but
Well, the ending is, tweet at us or send an email, right? To, with your
Yes.
suggestions and some motivation on it, right?
PalebHouse at ScienceSorter.com. ScienceSorter.com is our website where you can find show notes for this episode, links to bookshop.org, where you can buy this and any other book you want from bookshop.org through our affiliate page. Helps us out, helps us get a little cash back from them, but also helps your local bookstore economy, which is super important, especially in these trying times. So go do that. Thank you both for joining me very much. I appreciated it. It was really good to chat with you both. And we'll be back soon with another episode where you'll get a whole lot more science.
Sort of.
Visit sciencesortof.com for show notes, links to all the stories we talked about, and ways to interact with the hosts, guests, and other listeners. Science Sort of is brought to you by the Brachiolobe Media Network of podcasts, with audio engineering by Tim Dobbs of the Encyclopedia Brunch podcast. That's all for this week. See you next time on Science Sort of.
I was like, I'll put some sauce on it. And then I'm like, it doesn't need any sauce.
Doesn't need sauce.
The thing does what it does.
Doesn't need any of your hot liquid mercury blood on it.
Yeah, I just open my gut and it falls right out.
Jazz.
Oh, it's so great. The little jazz hands. Honestly, that's what sells it. It's the cute little Muppety jazz hands. And you're like, oh, I love him.
Yeah.
He's my best friend.
we have to protect him.
Yes, exactly.